Welcome to Wise Women with Daisy Khan. Today we'll be discussing the topic of the Hijrah, or migration, the journey that changed history forever. What year is it exactly? 2025? You think? Well, think again. Today marks the beginning of the Islamic New Year, and it's actually the year 1447. While the world celebrates January 1st as the start of the new year, Muslims around the globe are marking the first day of Muharram, commemorating one of the most pivotal moments in human history. Imagine leaving everything you've ever known in the dead of the night, knowing assassins are hunting you. This was the reality of Prophet Muhammad on a fateful night some 1447 years ago, a night that would change the course of history forever. For 13 long years, Prophet Muhammad and his followers endured relentless persecution in Mecca. What began in 610 as a divine revelation calling people to worship one God became a death sentence. The early Muslims were enslaved, they were starved, and beaten simply because they believed in the one God. The Meccans saw this message as a threat to their power, their tradition, and their way of life. I'm sure this resonates with some of you today because we are witnessing that around the globe. This persecution became so brutal that the Prophet was forced to make an agonizing decision. He urged those who had no protection to flee to undertake the first migration to Abyssinia, which is modern-day Ethiopia, where a Christian king named Negus offered refuge to them because they were fellow believers. Among those first refugees was Baraka, the woman who had raised the Prophet himself, who courageously organized and educated the small Muslim community living in exile. But even as his followers scattered across these foreign lands, Prophet Muhammad remained in Mecca for 13 years. He endured constant harassment and threats, and his ability to practice and preach was severely limited. Yet, he never raised his hand in retaliation. He never abandoned his mission. And this wasn't just about religious freedom. It really was about his survival and his community's survival, and especially for the entire future of Islam. The crisis reached its breaking point when Meccan tribes made a chilling decision. It was time to assassinate the Prophet. But as you know, God works in mysterious ways, and salvation came through an unexpected source, none other than a woman named Raqqa bint Abu Sayfa, who risked her own life to warn the Prophet of the plot. Picture this: assassins surrounding Prophet Muhammad's home under cover in darkness, their swords all hidden, waiting to strike. But inside, Prophet Muhammad's young cousin Ali made a decision that would echo throughout history. He courageously lay down in the Prophet's bed, knowing that he might die in his place. Meanwhile, Prophet Muhammad and his closest companion, Abu Bakr, slipped away into the night, beginning a dangerous journey into the unknown. This was called the Hijrah, linguistically meaning departure or migration. But in reality, it's so much more. It's a deep leap of faith into darkness, a 300-mile journey through scorching desert terrain to a distant oasis called Yathrib, later known as Medina. But here's what many don't realize. This wasn't just a story of men fleeing persecution. The Hijrah was revolutionary because of the extraordinary women who participated in it. In an era when women rarely traveled without male guardians, Muslim women undertook this perilous journey alone, putting their lives at risk to help establish a community of believers. Picture these brave souls, women traveling hundreds of miles across dangerous terrain, their feet bleeding with from rocky paths, and yet driven by an unshaken faith. They came to pledge their allegiance, what is called the pbuh. They wanted to let the Prophet know their hand was in his, knowing that they might never see their families again. One young woman, Kulthum, traveled such a considerable distance that when her family got angry, they demanded that the Prophet return her to them. Of course, he refused because he saw in her determination, resolve, and he honored it. So she made her own choice, and history was made. The significance of women participation was so profound that Salama, who later became the Prophet's wife and asked him that question, that would, of course, elicit a revelation. She said, why does the Quran only mention men's participation in Hijrah, in migration, but never women's? And of course, her plea reached the divine throne, and God responded. And the verse says, those who believe and have migrated and have struggled in the way of God with their possessions and their lives are greater in degree with God, and those they are triumphant. The Quran mentions those who migrated about 24 times across various chapters. And this is not just about acknowledgement, it's a divine revelation that women are equal partners in shaping the future of Islam. When the weary travelers finally saw the palm trees of Medina rising from the desert horizon, they were not just reaching a destination, they were arriving at a birthplace of a civilization. In Medina, Prophet Muhammad did not establish a religious community only, he built the world's first inclusive society. The migrants were welcomed by the Ansar, the helpers of Medina, who shared their homes, their wealth, and their lives with those refugees. Women and men collaborated as equals, building not just homes and houses, but a new social order based on justice, compassion, and mutual respect. This wasn't just about escaping persecution, it was about creating something entirely new. A community where the color of your skin, your tribal affiliation, or your wealth didn't determine your worth. And as the Prophet would later declare, God judges people not by their ethnicity or their riches, but simply by their piety and their moral consciousness. The importance of this migration was so profound that it became year one of the Islamic calendar, today's subject. So today we mark the year 1447 as we commemorate not just the historical event, but its living legacy. When Prophet Muhammad was finally able to return to Mecca 8 years later, he did something unprecedented in human history. Instead of seeking revenge against those who had persecuted, tortured, and killed his followers for 20 years, he forgave them all. He pardoned every person who had fought against him. And in that moment of ultimate triumph, he declared, no hijrah after the return of Mecca, except the struggle in the path of God with good intentions. So the true meaning of hijrah extends far beyond that historical journey. As the Prophet taught, the true immigrant is the one who migrated from all vices, bad behavior, and actions. And the true Muslim is one who the people are safe from his tongue and his hand. Today, millions of Muslims have migrated to Europe and America, echoing the same ancient journey, leaving behind familiar lands in search of freedom, safety, and the chance to practice their faith. Like their predecessors 1447 years ago, they carry with them not just hopes for a better future, but the responsibility of building bridges, creating understanding, and contribute to the societies that welcome them. Despite efforts by some to erase Islam from the hearts of Muslims, these believers continue building a better, more just future where all people can practice their faith freely with mutual respect for those who differ in belief. The Prophet Muhammad's hijrah was more than a migration. It was a declaration of women's rights and their equality with men in shaping community, a declaration of respect for all children of Abraham and the prophets who followed, a declaration that moved humanity forward towards a future where justice, compassion, and love can triumph over hatred and oppression. This journey that began 1447 years ago as a desperate flight from persecution became a movement that changed the course of history forever. It declared to the world that God's word is mercy, compassion, and love for all of God's children, for all of humanity, not just a select few. So as we enter this new Islamic year, the message of the Hijrah remains as relevant as ever. That sometimes to build a future we dream of, we must have the courage to leave behind what we've always known. And that true migration isn't about changing location. It's about transforming ourselves and our world in the pursuit of freedom and divine purpose. The Hijrah continues, not as a physical journey, but as an eternal migration towards becoming our better selves, building a more just society and creating a world where every child of Adam can live in dignity, freedom, and hope. Welcome to the year 1447. The journey continues.